That's called a deck. So it's basically, probably sold them down in Stoker. It's a long metal with a hook, big, so it's meant to clean out the cracks in your deck. Anyway, she had that thing, so she sort of used that, snake. And then actually, we were at a party and after that story, Peter's brother Jim, several hundred guests, he made up for several families. He made up.
So it might be a little bit of a wet day, so it's just a long morning anyway. And what time are we off? Do you know, is it 11 or 12? Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, 11 actually.
Is it 11?
Yeah, because lunch is 7.
Yeah, it looks like the rain probably won't peel out of here until about 10.
Yeah, when you see the temperatures right in the afternoon.
No. Is it more?
Oh, yeah, I'm just going by 6 miles. Like 8 down.
Well, I noticed that the cold front is pushing that rain,
And then stick it in the
and since that rain's gone, the temperature's going to drop.
Yeah, don't say that shield.
I think I'm going to wear a turtleneck and a big wool sweater.
She said,
10 a.m.
Yeah, that's to arrive.
First evening.
At 9 degrees in the afternoon. It goes down from 11 in the morning. And windy.
Third one, and I'm going on 45 years.
That's going to be chilly.
25K winds. Got to
It's not like we use it.
That could be cool.
Holy moly.
Well, maybe we'll use the literal meaning of the word sniffing store.
I think by the time
Yeah, I'm switching from peppermint schnapps to Grand Beauty.
On the granite walkway. So I went in the house, and somebody was
Okay,
carefully, because there's a rattlesnake right there. So Louis had there, he came out.
Good morning, folks. Slightly after 9 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary this morning? None. Our first item is delegation from the 6 Mile Lake Ratepayers Alliance. And I see Christian out there. Good morning. You're on.
Good morning, Your Worship, Councilors.
Good morning.
Good morning. Very quick, and I'm going to be working from a document, so pardon me if I'm reading from it. I'm not a chartered accountant, so some of this lingo I'm not exactly familiar with. However, our CA did review the 2015 statements as well as the 2016 budgets, and provided me with some insights as to what to discuss. So according to our review, 2014, between 2014 and 2015, there was an increase in cash and an increase in surplus of roughly $2 million. There was a 27% increase in working cash, and according to the same statements, cash flows show an increase of an annual surplus of over about 100%. Property taxes between the same time frame went up by 3.7%, which shows us that everything was better in 2015 relative to that of 2014. We noted that as for expenses, infrastructure spending was down by about $54,000. And that was on page 4 on the, with regards to the operation roads and streetlights. There was an increase in general government and admin, up by about $85,000. And what was interesting to note here was salaries increased by roughly 15%. So the questions that we have with regards to these statements or this information is, with regards to salaries in 2016 and 2017, how is it that we are going to see either a decrease or a net equal in salaries for 2016 and 2017, or in 2017? We'd like to see salaries stay at a reasonable level and not increase so drastically as to show a 15% increase. The other question that we have is with regards to infrastructure spending and what will be allotted for infrastructure spending in 2017, given that there is a surplus of cash in the 2015 and 2016 budgets. It seems that our taxes are going up, surpluses are there, but infrastructure spending is down. And we all know that 6 Mile Lane has some roads that need some attention. In addition to that, we asked whether or not it was prudent to increase the road shore allowance costs, which actually, in fact, decreased revenue by $66,000 in 2016. Our thoughts are to revert it back to the original price, thereby increasing tax revenues again. We are interested in seeing under capital operations a budget of $151,000 for some road repairs, which actually got reduced to about $30,000. It's a great job seeing that you guys came in under budget. However, there was a mention of a chip seal construction project in the 2016 statements or that outlined how the budget for the township went actually over budget, but made no mention of what that overage was. So ideally, we'd like to see, again, going forward, and understand what that overage is prior to the end of the year. Hopefully in 2017, we won't see overages and more underages. So in summary, we're concerned or we're questioning what infrastructure spending will be budgeted for 2017 on 6 Mile Lake. How, as a result of land building restrictions, we're going to be paying less taxes relative to Gloucester Pool? Or how do we know that we're actually receiving this? How does 6 Mile Lake actually know that we're receiving a balanced amount of the infrastructure spending, given that our tax base pays less than the other lakes? What is the projected overhead in 2017? And how will or how does the township propose in keeping overhead and payrolls down? And my final question is, what is forecasted, either an increase or decrease in taxes for 2017 on 6 Mile Lake? Keeping in mind that inflation is roughly 1%, and there's been a large surplus in 2016, thus no increase should be seen in property taxes for 2017. That is it. Any questions?
Councilors have any questions of our presenter?
Thank you.
It doesn't appear to be, but I would suggest, Christian, that you attend every one of our budget meetings to be able to absorb the discussion, and we'll probably answer a good number of your questions as to why we do what we do.
And we intend to be here, so thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Have a good morning.
Okay, so adoption of the agenda is moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Yesterday, we moved, or wished to move, the 6 Mile Lake Ratepayers Alliance request for recording council, C.O.W. Committee of Adjustment meetings on to item 7B1 to coincide with Member Cooper's request for recording of Committee of Adjustment meetings. Any other suggestions for amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay, so our next item is procedural bylaw update. As we all know, this is a living document, changes from time to time, so Madam Clerk, give us a synopsis.
The main thing that we are proposing is, at the last meeting, it was decided that the people who come here very often to present to council and committee of the whole, the OPP, the District of Muskoka with water quality programs, we were going to put them under the department so that they weren't restricted to the 10 minutes because we usually have a lot of information to tell us. But when we do that, we don't know what time to tell them to appear. So we've proposed that they also go in the morning, so it's easier to tell them what time to come. And so we're not sitting here all day. Another change was, as you saw yesterday with the motion for reconsideration, one of the changes is outlining that process. And yeah, all of the changes that we're suggesting and also just have to do with wording and making things more clear when you're reading them. Just going through. All the changes are in red on the document in your agenda.
So any questions at this point? Councilor Douglas?
Just wondering, Jessica, did we talk at all about people coming in to give a delegation on a timeline like that? And how many times per month or year?
Yes, so the original bylaw that we were working on last month already said that a group or a person could only come and talk on the same item twice in one calendar year. And we changed the time limit from 15 minutes to 10 minutes to allow for 3 delegations rather than the 2 delegations. So that was done last month at the previous.
That wasn't implemented.
Okay, thank you.
So in here you had a difference between a delegation and a deputation. So that was news to me after all the years I've sat here. I thought they were one and the same sort of thing, so.
The deputation is when council requests people to come, and then delegation is when people will approach us and request to come.
Verification.
I know I read this last week, and I don't think I saw anything unless I emailed you. No? Okay. Councilor Ranko?
I'm just reading, I just didn't know, this was struck out on Schedule 3 on page 19 of 33. Talking about recording equipment may be used by members of the public and the press, except that closed session subject to consent by resolution by council. And then it strikes out, which consent shall not be denied unless the use of such equipment would cause undue disruption or would unnecessarily impede the ability of the public to attend. That's been all struck out. You want to talk about that?
Yes, so that was struck, that was also observed, it was pointed out that that section was in there actually, and it just didn't appear to be required, saying that council would not be allowed to make a decision. They would not be allowed to deny it. So that is one of the proposed changes, but again, doesn't have to be true.
Where's page 19?
I know it was 17.
19 or 33?
Oh, 33, I guess.
Oh, sorry, you're looking on the actual.
No, it's Schedule 3. Schedule J. I gotta get my glasses.
It would be, if you were on page 15, looking at
Okay,
it.
got it.
Yeah, I'll be at 15 on the,
Thank you.
anything else? Your resolution here in Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved, the committee of the whole recommends that council approves the amendments to bylaw 2016-61, being the procedural bylaw as outlined in Schedule A. Anything further on? Seeing none, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? That's carries. Okay. If you ever see anything in there that doesn't make sense or whatever, we're going to bring it to the attention of the clerk, because it's a long, long document and it's hard to absorb a lot of it. I know it's changed numerous times since I've been on. I could dig out the very first one that we went by and would probably laugh at it. But I remember one go around, we got procedural bylaws from many, many towns all over the place. And I still have them piled up in my basement somewhere. And they're probably 1.5 feet tall. So if anybody wants to read them at any point in time.
You got a fireplace, haven't you? I was just gonna say, I need some paper for my fireplace.
They had interesting things in which were germane to their particular area and not necessarily other areas. No one signed up for open forums? Okay. Move on to operations, the Mactier Arena roof, an ongoing saga.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this time is maybe getting a little bit better. We had a contractor take a look at whether we can put a liner over top of the existing roof. They said they can, and we guarantee it for 10 years, but before they did anything, they said that until an engineer says it's okay, they're not going to do it. But they suggested the previous engineer may have been overly conservative and suggested that we have somebody else, another structural engineer, take a look at the roof to review what's being proposed. So at this point, this work isn't budgeted. We're asking for an allowance of up to $20,000 to retain the services of an engineer to do this. And I expect it'll be around $15,000, but I'd like a little bit of you.
So this liner, Brad, would it be slipperier than the existing roof to allow snow to slide off much sooner?
I don't know. I don't know the specifics. I don't know.
The last thing we want is 3 feet of snow sitting up there. You want it to come off. So, okay. Brian?
Yeah, Brad, my concern is with the 10-year warranty. As we know, on this building right here, we have shingles on that have a 20-year warranty, but the company that manufactured the shingles is now bankrupt with a class action lawsuit ensuing, and it could be very, very costly. So I think we need to do our diligence on the product that's going to be used, whether it's a torch down type product or what it is, and just make sure that there's a strong history of the company supplying, not the company that's applying, but the company that's supplying the product, that we have a long-term expectation for this roof, and we're not going to be dealing with what we deal with here. Just a thought.
Mr. Mayor, I definitely agree with a proven history. I think that's the key.
Yeah, great, thank you.
When we're looking at this, will some comment be made as to what we need to do in the future? Let's say we put this down for 10 years. What's happening after 10 years? I mean, it would just be interesting to have the structural engineer comment as to, okay, what's going to happen if you do this for 10 years? What do we see in the future? You know, these things are, unfortunately, this concept of arenas was a little bit of a Trojan horse, because, you know, the funding came from Ontario or a place like that, and then, but then, you know, we're stuck with the cost of these things, and therefore I think it's very important that we ensure that we're thinking long-term, because, I mean, while there was talk last term of council of having the marijuana grow up, obviously we ran into serious debate about that and rejection of that. So if we can at least look at what the long-term cost is of what we need to do, and can be also budgeting as to making sure our reserves are up to speed.
All right.
Brad, do you think there's a need for a place marker on this in the budget? Do you think it's something that's going to go ahead in this fiscal year, or I know you've asked for $15,000 or $20,000 for the report, but do we need to put away the funds for the actual installation of the product?
To the mayor, we do have funding for a portion of the work through one of the alphabet funding programs. So we will be including the remainder of that, proposing it in the 2017 budget.
Okay, thank you.
And Paul?
Do we have a capital program we put money aside for the next 10 years? Because probably after 10 years, both layers have to come off and the whole room have to be redone and be supported. So is there a fund, Mactier Arena Group fund that we could start collecting over the next 10 years? Or should we have something like that?
Lori?
Thank you, Worship. There's not a Mactier Arena fund per se, but we are increasing the capital levy every year to fund general capital. It's not specific to any one project.
Okay, but this is a known expense in 10 years, so.
They're all known expenses. I mean,
Yeah.
council can direct any funds they like, but there's a plan that goes with our asset management plan, and there are many priorities in there, not just the arena.
Jane, did you have something to say?
I echo those comments exactly. That's what the asset management plan
Mhm.
points out, and that every year what we're striving towards to put that extra money away for capital recovery, just to recover these on these repairs so that they don't get behind.
Okay, so we have a list coming during the budget process, we'll have a list of all these things that we're saving for?
That's part of the
You've seen it in the asset management plan.
Yeah, we do see it once a year, I guess, but,
Yeah.
okay, I'll just make note of it.
The update, the 10-year capital plan will be coming as part of the budget process.
This money-saving process has been mandated by the
Oh, I
province,
know that.
that we're supposed to have as much reserves on hand as our assets, so that we can replace them without having to borrow money. But to increase the taxes, you know, it'd just go crazy around here, trying to catch up. And you remember what happened a number of years ago, where the reserves were depleted. And I think we've gotten up to where they were before, and maybe a bit beyond. I guess we'll have that during our budget discussions. But, you know, without huge tax increases, it's going to be a long time before we do catch up. And of course, we know the council of the day will make the decision as to whether they replace the roof or do something else with the arena or whatever other infrastructure project we have. So,
Well, just to explain again that we do not necessarily have cash put aside. It's basically that, you know, from a corporate standpoint, it's the retained earnings we have on our balance sheet, so it's all our assets. And we do have a few accounts where there is a cash on hand. The rest of it is just the strength of our balance sheet. And I would make the one observation that it is not a good idea in my mind to build up cash on our balance sheet, because we saw what happened 2 terms ago. There was cash on the balance sheet, and then you get a new sheriff in town, and they want to spend the money because they say there's cash there. So my suggestion is, whatever you do, don't build up a lot of cash, because then somebody has a bright idea as to, we need this park or that park or another park, and the money gets spent. But there are only a couple of accounts that actually have cash. The rest of it is just the strength of the balance sheet.
So Brad, if this membrane that you're talking about, I'll talk to you offline about it. Because I'm familiar with a company down in Cambridge that builds membranes, and they used it on the airport in Toronto, Terminal 3. As Brian was talking there, it's a torch down type thing, but it has a much longer life than 10 years. So, and it was just a thin membrane. I ended up with a piece of it from a fellow that worked there. It was just an offcut, and I actually used it as my first row under the shingles on the house. It's unbelievably strong. It beats Grace and Ico out of this world.
Did you have a building permit for that?
I did, and it's still hanging up there, although it's faded.
More importantly, did you have a fire extinguisher when you were doing it? That's,
Oh, I didn't seal it down.
okay, because I would make that one comment. Make sure that the installer has lots of insurance, because there's been more than one building that's burned down when you're using a torch.
The son actually sealed it, so often I put it down.
Well, that's a bit of fun.
But it has shingles over top, so it's got a million nails holding it in place too. So, I guess we have a resolution. It's moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends that staff be authorized to retain the services of a structural engineer with an outset limit of $20,000 to undertake a structural analysis of the McTier Arena roof to ascertain whether the existing roof structure can support the additional weight of a roof sealant, and that the cost be funded 33% from the Canada 150 grant and 67% from the Parkland Reserve Fund. Anything further on that? Call the question. All those in favor? That carries.
Get us a deal, Brad. Get us a good deal.
And the Parkland Fund is one that has cash, correct?
Yeah.
That's my understanding. It's a specific cash account.
Okay, the next item, I asked for this to be on the agenda. It's just for information. It's not very often that we get someone coming to council complimenting us on all the things we do. But everybody that reads our agendas can see it, and I sent Bill a thank you note also. I think that's included on here also. It's nice to have good relations like that. It makes things go a lot smoother. And our next item is Member Cooper recording of Committee of Adjustment meeting. So I'll let you take the lead on that.
Thank you, Mayor Ray. Yeah, so I sent out a background piece on this and just was encouraging us to examine the concept of recording more of the meetings that we have, committee meetings in addition to the council meetings. And wrote down a few thoughts I had about it. I was really also trying to provide some food for thought and get some feedback from some of the other councillors. But did note that, in our strategic plan, we talk about a culture of and practices that are related to transparency, accountability, inclusiveness, objectivity, and clear communications. I think one of the other compelling reasons that we might want to consider doing this is that really twofold. One is being consistent in terms of making information available to the public
related to planning issues. So, as you know, in the last few sessions of council, we've considered planning plan amendments, severances, interim control bylaws, etc. at council, which is recorded and available to our constituents through our recordings live and on our website, and yet our proceedings of the Committee of Adjustment are not recorded, and so that seems a little bit inconsistent to me from a planning perspective. So, not a little bit, quite a bit. And so I'm suggesting that it's worth a discussion. There are, I know, points of view for and others against, but I did want to share one more thing with the council today, aside from some of the points that you saw in my report. And that was, I did a little bit of digging, and so I just wanted to pass around a piece that was sent to me about this, and we can read it later. It's just all part of sort of the background material. Let's see if there's enough here to go around. There's some, a couple more. I just thought I'd hit the high points here, though. This was I consulted with John Kaiser, who's a resident, or seasonal resident in Honey Harbor. And John is a planning lawyer. John has been a planning lawyer for quite some time, and actually was on the Committee of Adjustment in Mississauga for, I think, something like 25 years, and actually was the chair of the Mississauga Committee of Adjustment. So I thought he'd be a good person to consult with this. He's no longer on the Committee of Adjustment. I think dropped off 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, but when I sent him this note, I was inquiring as to what his thoughts were about the issue of recording Committee of Adjustment proceedings. And he interestingly got back with, I thought, some very good advice. And essentially, he said that Mississauga was the first municipality in Ontario to start recording Committee of Adjustment proceedings in May of 2015. You know, he talks about some of the same things that I just mentioned to you, which is sort of transparency and making people who can attend in person comfortable with the process and actually have the information available to them. I thought it was particularly interesting. If you read down a little bit further, the Committee of Adjustment in Mississauga has reported to council, and after having more than a year of videos, find that there have been at least 45 live views per week. So I take it they have a Committee of Adjustment meeting once a week, and up to 345 views for an individual meeting where a good number of residents were interested in the subject matter of the application. And so he just goes on to say, in the final result, the video gives people a sense of how the Committee of Adjustment applications proceed and gives them access to it. I think it's particularly critical for us to consider the fact, and I know people would like to be reminded of this, but somewhere between 85 and 90% of our residents are seasonal and can't be here, and certainly can't be here for about 6 months of the year, and even in the summer months, sometimes are often are working during the week and can't be here on a Friday morning. So if we want to have transparency and accessibility for our constituents, I am of the view that it's at least worth considering this as a procedure that we should follow here. And so there we go. I think the transparency thing was pretty critical, and accountability. I think we have Committee of Adjustment members who are also on this council, and I think we all need to be held accountable as well. So that's my little presentation. I'd love to have some feedback.
Councilor Edwards?
I asked the question, why would we not do this? In my mind, if we don't do this, it raises real questions. And the question the public would be asking is, what do they know? What is known? So I don't see any reason for recording. I did have a note from one of the constituents who had a concern with the fact that if, I gather, if ours ends up going through YouTube or whatever, I don't have, and that therefore this is out in social media. Well, I don't have a problem with social media because as long as we have control of what goes out, I don't see that there's going to be any doctoring, etc. But I do beg to come back to that question. Why would we not do this? And I can't think of any good reason why we wouldn't do this. And others have done it.
I'm not in disagreement with this, but I really think it should be studied in depth. There's issues of privacy to do with the members, the public members that sit on council. There's issues of privacy with people's names, addresses, everything going out there for everybody in the world to see. And we know about the problems in the world today, about what we have in the way of security and that. I don't think it's something that we can just move ahead with. I think we need to get legal advice on this. I think we need to have a study done on this and make sure that we are not getting ourselves in a legal bind because of what we're going to do. I think it's important that we do our diligence before we move ahead with this.
That's okay.
I'll second what Brian has said, and also I would recommend that if any decision was made, it would not be implemented until the end of this term, because the current members on the Committee of Adjustment have a 4-year term which coincides with ours. And then when you are advertising for new Committee of Adjustment members, if in fact we are going to record, they should be fully aware before they accept the position on the Committee of Adjustment, thereby ensuring, you know, that as councillors we signed up for it, we're public figures. People on the Committee of Adjustment are not public figures, and they should not have it forced upon them by starting in the middle of the term to record them.
Councillor Douglas?
Thank you. Much to what Councillor Kay and Councillor Wojcik are saying, it's quite difficult to start moving the goalposts in the middle of a term with people who have applied for a job that was not posted, that it would be reported to the public. And I think that any change, first of all, should be researched before we step into that arena as to our liability. And also, it should be advertised for the next Committee of Adjustment if we do change our rules on this. So people have an opportunity that are applying for that position, know that they will be on camera and on YouTube. Not everyone is comfortable in front of cameras. It's also noteworthy to say that, you know, there are a lot of private information that goes out with these applications, letters of support. This is substantially, in my opinion, hinder the process of people stepping forward to support or not support an application. And I think that we need to seriously look at that whole process on whether this is going to be something that is advantageous for the process or will be a disadvantage.
Councillor Rienko?
Yeah, I have some concerns with this too. I think, well, you saw here a resolution from the Committee of Adjustments, and it's unanimously defeated by all the members of the committee. So it's kind of hard for me to decide, well, these people are all wrong, I'm right, and they will do as I tell them. I just can't do that. So if it was split, or they said, yeah, I would do it, but I'm not going to use my power to force them to be on camera. The other issue I had too, and it was an email we got this morning from Bruce Hanson, and he brought up a good point. Now, why is the OMB taped? And it's judicial. This is a quasi-judicial committee. So I think if we're going to do an investigation, we've got to find out why the OMB doesn't allow cameras. I think we all know why courts don't allow cameras, but again, I think we have to use some of that justification, because we are in a quasi-jurisdictional thing here too. And as you say, these people aren't public figures. I say these people are public, they're not, well, they're not public figures, but they're members of the public. But I agree, if we're going to do this, it's going to be done with the new council. It's got to be part of the terms of reference for any our members on this committee. If we're going to force them to do it this year, then I think each of the members should have a chance to withdraw their membership on this and so on. So I think at this time that's premature, and I agree that we need to do some research to find out why OMB hearings not taped.
Councilor Edwards?
I think we're going down a very slippery road, guys. I mean, this will be one of the hot topics in the election, because this is not private information. This is a public committee. It's public information. We're making up stories here about the OMB doesn't do it, so we don't do it. Well, we've got Mississauga doing it. I mean, yes, you can get a legal opinion that says anything, but guys, pardon? It's not a legal opinion. Anyway, my point is, pardon?
Make your point, please.
I think,
In 2 ways.
pardon?
Stop the 2 ways.
Yeah, she started, okay. My point is, you're going totally against the basics of democracy on this by wanting to keep this just to a small group, so nobody really wants to find out. So this will be a key one in the election. I'm going to be asking for a recorded vote on this one as to why we do not want to record the Committee of Adjustment.
Okay, one more round, and then I'm going to read the resolution. Councilor Cooper?
I just would like to say that I brought this forward for consideration, and the resolution that's sitting here
It's just for staff to look into it.
is just for staff to look into it, and so that's really the question, and I think we'd be really ill-advised not to give this very serious consideration. I want to say that to my fellow councillors, that if this is turned down, it would be most unfortunate, and I think it would be in one way, the perspective that I'm coming from here is transparency and availability and accessibility to our constituency, and our constituency is largely not able to be at these meetings. And if this was Mississauga, my goodness, we could probably go from working and attend a meeting, but we're a long distance from where many of our constituents live, and I think we have to make our public meetings public and available. Thank you.
Councilor Rocha?
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Cooper's, a lot of the statements made there, but I want to make sure that we do our diligence here and we do research this. I brought this up with other committees within the township, one that I chair being the policing committee, and asked at that time whether they thought it would be appropriate to broadcast our policing committee meetings. And I was told, no, the police do not want to be on videotape. There's a security reason why they do not want to be in the public eye in that. So in my case, it was very cut and dry and simple. The policing committee was not going to move ahead with it. But I think we need to really look at this seriously and see our doors are open for the public to come in. We're not doing much more than just opening the doors a little wider and letting them see it. So that's my thoughts on it.
Councilor Bianco?
I'm not against the concept of doing committee adjustments. I'm not against it. I think it has to be reviewed. And I think it needs to be assessed in light of the OMB not being able, I don't know why the OMB doesn't want to have their hearings taped. I want to find that out. So I'm all for it. I don't know what the resolution is. I haven't seen it. But if the resolution says we're going to study it, I'll approve it. But if we're asking to have committee of adjustments start taping as soon as possible, then I will be against it. I think we have to take this very, very slowly and get a lot more information. And I think we have to get the members of the committee of adjustment on board before we force them. Because I'm not going to force them to do something they don't want to do. So they have to be part of the process. And if they don't want to do it, then I'm reluctant to make them do it. So they have to be part of the process. Let's get some information. Let's just make sure we have all the information. and talk with the adjustments and then go forward.
Okay, I'm going to read the resolution. I believe it was in the package also. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends the Council direct staff to research the options regarding the recording of Committee of Adjustment meetings and report back at a future meeting. We're not saying, yeah, go ahead and start recording. We're going to look into it. And I would also suggest, since this OMB and so on came up, that we look into the reasons why they don't record those. Seeing more hands, Councillor Wojcik.
Is there a need to put a date maybe when we're going to get the report back? It just says a future report, that could be in a year and a half from now. Just wondering if that's pertinent to this. Try it.
I figure you could have this.
I think it's important.
Excuse me, staff, when do you think you could have this?
So not November, your worship, but December or January. This cycle is so quick, we're already working on November.
January?
Report.
I don't see an issue with that myself. So, Councillor Edwards, you have a comment?
I don't see why we are trying to hide behind the OMB. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
Thank you, we've heard that comment before.
Okay, thank you. We'll have recorded vote on this, please.
We will, thank you. Councillor Edwards has asked for a recorded vote.
Member Edwards?
Yes.
Member Kay?
No.
Member Rangel?
Yes?
Member Bocek?
Yes.
Member Cooper?
Yes.
Member Douglas? Yes. Chair Bray?
Yes.
Carried.
Part 2 of 7B, the resolution is moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that they approve the request from the 6 Mile Lake Ratepayers Association to record council/COW/committee adjustment meetings. Since we're already recording council and COW meetings, that's a non-issue at this point. Committee of Adjustment meetings, we've just passed a resolution asking staff to investigate and report back to us, so I would suggest we defer this particular resolution and request until that report comes to Committee of the Whole, either in December or January, and then we can make a decision from there. Mr. Wojcik?
I think I understand where this is coming from, and that, you know, at any given time, council can pass a resolution which stops the videotaping and the recording of Committee of the Whole and council meetings. At that point, you know, they would like to have access to what's going on in the council room without showing up. However, I think it opens up a big Pandora's box, and I would really, really like to see a deferral on this until we find out what's happening with everything else we're involved in here.
Along with the request to investigate, can we get stats on who's streaming it live, who's watching it later?
Certainly stats on how many, not who. I
Uh,
think that's what you meant, but
That's
just to be clear.
that's what I meant.
Yes.
Okay. Do the IP addresses not come up?
Sorry, Your Worship, you're talking tech to an accountant,
I believe they do.
David.
We could-
He could answer that question.
So, just wondering if there's a way of identifying repeat users.
So the analytics don't break it down that way, they just provide numbers.
Okay.
of TV viewers.
Just give us as much information as we can. Study. Councilor Greenfield?
Remind me, was there a resolution as to when we were going to have a report back? I thought we said after 1 year or 6 months. Wasn't there a resolution saying that would be report back to council on this?
Thank you, Worship. I've heard that a couple of times, but we went back through it, so we didn't see that anywhere, so
I would think 1 year would be,
we may have had that discussion, but we didn't record it.
Let's have all that along with this other report so that when it comes to us, all at once, and then we can see. All right.
Maybe helpful, I think in the original resolution where it was put forward that we were going to investigate, I think there was a question asked, would we have a review in a year's time to see if it was, A, being used and if it was financially feasible to move ahead. I'll try and I have a copy of that, I'll try and get it to you.
The clerk couldn't find it, so it probably wasn't.
I don't think it was in the resolution, I think it was in the background.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about it, but may not have.
We don't do it anyway.
So let's try for December for a Merry Christmas. Okay, so I'll call for a deferral on this resolution until the report comes. All those in favor of deferral? Carries.
I'll run the battery.
Okay, item C, member K.
Okay, I think it's pretty straightforward. Two parts to the recommendation. Waste management systems identified during the septic inspection program and how to deal with them, and how to deal with waste management on legal non-conforming dwellings. I think our CEO, who is professional, accredited by the Ontario Building Code Association, should have, I won't use the word discretionary powers because that's not a liked word, should have powers to make decisions in order to expedite a resolve to the specific problem.
Councilor Edwards?
What do we do about the district rules? Is he going to have power to override the district rules?
I'm asking that we direct I'm asking for a report, so that will be covered in the report.
Let me read the resolution first this time. Moved by Councilor Douglas, seconded by Councilor Kay. Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends Council direct staff to report back on how the discretionary powers of the Township's Chief Building Official may be broadened for the replacement of existing waste management systems, septic systems and holding tanks on developed properties within the township that have no previous township or MOE approval. Okay.
If I can give you a little overview, the problem that we're faced with is when we go out and we inspect an existing property that's developed, they may have a holding tank, but there's no Ministry of the Environment approval or no township approval. If they have an approval and that system's failing, we had one just this summer, within 2 days there was a brand new holding tank put on that property because they had an existing MOE approval. We pushed it back. That was rectified. We had another one out in Georgian Bay where they had no approval. It was failing. The homeowner's got a epoxy on it right now. It's not leaking. We went a couple times. That's a ticking time bomb. We could have got a brand new holding tank. In my mind, there's no other system that would go on that property. And it's not like we would allow them expansion. We need to have the tools in place to create what's existing. not allow them to add on. If they want to add on, then they need to go for the variance, they need to get the survey, they need to get all the proper documentation to correct what's existing. We have another property where a gentleman approached me out up above the lock from Fort Severn. He's on a peninsula. The existing sewage system is probably 30 feet from the water at the front, and I would say 40 and 50. The new location where he would put it would be 125 feet back, 80 and 75. The bed would be fully raised. This thing is dug in the ground. I don't know whose grandfather put the septic in. It's a steel tank. At the time we were there, it's not failing. I explained to him he had to go for a survey and minor variance. And his exact words were, I won't do nothing until I have to. So if we're really concerned about the environment, septic reinspection, we need to have the tools to correct these now.
Okay, Councillor Randall?
In that particular case, I might agree with you because he's moving it back. My position is that there are systems out there that haven't been approved by, well, they might have been approved by MOE or they might not have been approved, and they haven't been approved by the township. And if those systems are failing and they're close to the water, I would not want them replaced. I want them moved back 30 meters back. So if these people are willing to immediately move these things back 30 meters, I have no problem with that. That's a discretion that you want. But if you want discretion to replace an existing system without these permits close to the water, then I have a problem.
With all due respect, Paul, we would not allow a class 4 sewage system or 4F with tile field to go in any closer than 75, 80 feet. It would be the minimum Ontario building code for that. It would just be allowing them to treat what they have. No addition, nothing else. Or it would be a holding tank for that property to go in that location. The one on Georgian Bay, in order for him to get a 20-meter setback for that holding tank, you would not get a machine up on that rock to put the gravel down the level of it.
And let me clarify, I have no problem with holding tanks. So holding tanks have to be close to the shore, because they need to be pumped out. That I can see. But when you have an old system that is close to the water, and they want to replace it, then they should move it back. They should be required to move it back. So when you talk about replacing existing systems, I don't want to give you discretion to replace existing systems close to the water. So I think what you want here is maybe to do a study and so on and come back with what discretion powers you need. I support that. But again, I want to move systems back as far as we can, back 30 meters, if they're going to be replaced.
Dave, what's the new rules from us, holding tanks close to shore?
20-meter setback, they don't have existing approval.
Okay, so
We have an island property that you cannot achieve 20 meters all the way around that property. So what the mandate is for us is he needs a survey. He needs to go for a variance on an island that's nowhere near 20 meters.
20 meters back can be a problem in a number of areas, and I see hands up everywhere, and I'm going to go down the table one by one. But we put in this rule, I guess in our last zoning bylaw thing, that holding tanks got to be back 20 meters.
Correct.
What's the building code say? I think it's 3 meters, isn't it?
From the property line.
From the property line.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of an issue in some circumstances.
Correct. Holding tanks need to go in the best location on that property. Realistically, the building department, we don't care if they have to pump it. If it's the best location, most suitable location on that property, that's where it needs to go. In no way, shape, or form would we allow anyone to replace an existing, if they may have a class 4 sewage system that's primitive with clay tiles, that does not mean if we go out there and we find that it's failing, they're going to get a class 4 sewage system on that property. If they can't achieve the setback, they will be put in a holding tank or removed in the plumbing.
So this resolution is not to give these discretionary powers right now. It's to bring a report to us so that we can see all the different scenarios that you've run into since the new zoning has been
situations are, but then have to make a zoning bylaw amendment. That's the key. So you can't just change the rules for days, you have to go through a zoning bylaw. So the report will bring, these are the situations that we're facing, these are the recommendations of how we might address them, these are the changes that need to be considered for the zoning bylaw, and then you have to go through the zoning bylaw public process. So this is a spring fix, it's not a next month, it's a process.
That's fine. Okay, I'll start at this end. Peter?
It's just, you know, if we can make life a little bit more flexible for Dave and it works for us, I'm certainly happy to hear about it. I really am anxious to make sure that a system can be more compliant than it should be. And I just want to make sure that we try and remember that as part of this process. The other thing I would ask is that we consult with, we have some very wise people in our communities that have some pretty strong knowledge in this area. So I hope that we'll consult with our experts that are available to us at no charge, by the way. And I would also just remind all of us that there was a presentation, I think in 2014, related to septic systems. I'm sure you were there. And so there's some pretty good advice there and some pretty good people that we can draw on. So I just remind us of that information that did come forward in 2014. Thank you.
We have to remember that our CBO is an expert also. How many years now, Dave? 32, 33. Sure.
Okay.
Councilor.
All we're asking for, I just want to make sure that we're perfectly clear. We just need the tools to correct what's existing. We could even put in the new approval that we give them for that system is not dead. We're not about to say to them, yeah, let's give you a septic system good for 6 bedrooms. If they've got 3 bedrooms right now or 2, that's what that sewage system will be good for. If they need to upgrade that sewage system, then they need to go for a variance and they need to follow the proper channels. It's just to correct the unsafe situations that are out there now so we can get them resolved and move forward.
So we'll get all that in your report.
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Douglas?
Thank you. So I probably sound like a broken record here, but I've said this many times. We have a CBO who has many years of experience, is a professional, and has the best interest of this council and the township. And I do believe that we need to give him the tools to deal with the situations we have that are unsafe at the moment. And I think where Councillor Kay was coming from with this resolution was, if we don't agree to do this, we have situations out there that could be 6 weeks held up. How much pollution are we going to have in that time frame? I mean, I think, Dave, you can maybe reiterate what I'm saying here. We have had situations where the problem is immediate. And to go through the process that maybe we have in place right now would mean that is a pollutant for a 6-week turnaround until we actually get the proper documentation put in place.
It would actually be longer. By the time they did the survey and they went for committee of adjustment, do we put an order to lock them out of their cottage? Do we make them remove their pumps, their plumbing? If an applicant were to challenge us in the court of law and they were to say that we submitted this, we wanted to do a brand new holding tank, but the township wants to go through the variance process, I'm not so sure a judge would rule in the township of Georgian Bay's favor.
Councilor Bochek?
Just to throw my 2 cents in here, because I am out in the field quite often, and Dave and I have visited a few places. We have to understand that there's undersized islands that were developed back in the 20s and 30s. They don't meet any of the new criteria. They cannot meet any of the new criteria. They can't meet setbacks. They can't meet anything that we want from them. But yet they have a gray water pit on the island, which is filling up and overflowing, and they have some people water the front lawn with their sewage out there. So I think what we're looking at here is the ability for Dave to go in and save the day instantly, rectify it, and then work with the people to see, if there's any challenges they can get by and anything else. But I would much rather see the authority be in our CBO's hands to say, I want a holding tank here in a week. I don't care about, you don't meet the setbacks or anything else, we gotta stop the sewage from leaching. So that's where, and I am gonna use the word discretionary power, because I don't think it's a bad thing in this case. I think he needs to have that power to stop it.
Oops, Nick?
I think we have to echo and remind ourselves what Lori has said, so the C.O.W can't do something that's illegal. So if he tries to issue a permit that doesn't comply with the zoning bylaw, that's illegal. So you have to change the official plan and the zoning bylaw, so as Lori said, it's a long process. It's not something that can happen tomorrow. So there is no discretionary power here.
Pat?
It's somewhat akin to the discussion we've had yesterday with regard to discretion. Our rules do not give discretion. The problem, if you start having discretion, then we're taking on liability, because somebody comes and says, well, you know, I don't agree, the rules haven't been followed here, and oh, we don't need a survey. Well, I went through this the last term of council, where, you know, I had to turn in one of my wife's cousins at the end of the island. The contractor said, oh, it's 100 feet from the water. It was 18 feet from the high water mark. I didn't like doing that to have surveys, but I sure as hell can't tell where the high water mark is, and I don't think Dave wants to be in a position where he's having to ascertain where the high water mark is. So the survey aspect is certainly an issue I have a problem with. The discretion, I think you will find all of these, our rules are, here's the rule, if you haven't met it, then, and you want an exception, we do not give those powers to the CBO. We give them to professional engineers. That's how the system works in the province of Ontario. They are the ones who will then come along and take with all of the data and determine what possibly can be done with regard to the property. So all of this is with respect to making sure that we are only doing what is in our rules and that we aren't taking on liability. And lastly, I've already been told by one member of the public that if we go ahead and do this, we will be at the OMB. So I think we got to be very careful as to how we do this. We do not give discretion in our bylaws.
We're debating something that's not in front of us yet. All this is a resolution asking staff to bring a report back. I would like to cross off the word discretionary in this resolution and just have how the powers of the Township Chief Building Official, the mover is Councillor Douglas and the seconder is Councillor Kay. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Just leave it as the powers of. So, I think I'd like to end the debate. All the debate should be about here is, are we going to ask staff to bring a report back? Is that what it's about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we separate the report into holding tanks and septic fields? Because basically, I can see giving you discretionary powers or whatever for holding tanks, because they have to be placed immediately. But when it comes to replacing existing systems, beds, then I'm all for moving them back and so on. So I like the report separated into those two things, because I'm more willing to give discretion for holding tanks than I am for septic systems.
So we're not going to give discretion, we're just going to give the power.
Whatever.
Kind of like our slush fund that we don't have. Okay, I think everyone's in agreement that, or almost everyone is in agreement that they want to report back. I'll call the question on the resolution. Does anybody need a reread?
Sure.
Okay, it's moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Kay. Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends Council direct staff to report back on how the powers of the Township's Chief Building Official may may be broadened for the replacement of existing waste management systems, in brackets, septic systems and holding tanks, into brackets, on developed properties within the township that have no previous township or MOE approval. That's all we're asking for to report back on. Call the question, all those in favor? Carries, any opposed?
I think we already know the answers, so I'm opposed.
It carries. Thank you for bringing that forward, Kathy.
I'll just give everybody's interested in it.
Where are we at?
So we're at item D, and I'll read the resolution first. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council, and there's 3 bullets here. First one, reminds our planning staff that the expectation is that township planning documents are to be strictly upheld. Second bullet, notifies the Committee of Adjustment that Council anticipates the Committee of Adjustment will approve or deny applications in their entirety without negotiating any additional conditions. And the third bullet, carefully balance the best use of tax dollars while upholding the intent of township planning documents when determining how to resolve an OMB appeal. Councillor Domenico, I believe this is yours.
Yeah, this is my event for today. Over the last year or so, now that we have our zoning bylaw 1475 in place, we do have new rules and regulations applying to our township. And at our meeting in June with the community association, the issue came up about enforcing our bylaws. And at that time, or shortly thereafter, when we got a report from staff, it came back that we should hire another enforcement officer. And I'm saying to myself, well, that's okay in hiring an enforcement officer, but it's council, committee of adjustment, and staff enforcing the bylaws. And so I want to have a discussion with council on this today. Are we comfortable at the amount of negotiations we are presently doing in helping people comply to our regulations? Yesterday we had the overall thing where we negotiated a new number, and we weren't actually enforcing our bylaws. Committee of Adjustment, I remember on the Committee of Adjustment, and Larry, myself, Jim Bowden, Lorna Keel, and so on. And I remember Jim Bowden saying, only here to approve or deny the application. We aren't here to negotiate. And that's the way the Committee of Adjustment worked for years. We never negotiated conditions. If the proponent wanted to negotiate something, then we deferred it, and the proponent went away and came back with what he wanted to do. And we would deny it or accept it. Now the Committee of Adjustment is negotiating conditions on a lot of their approvals. I don't have a problem with that because basically it's saving taxpayers money by not having to go to the OMB. And so if we decide to be more forceful in abiding by our zoning bylaws and official plan, yes, we will have more OMB hearings. But the public will then say to themselves, at least we're trying to enforce our bylaws. But I think there's a little too much negotiation going on in council, Committee of Adjustment, and with staff to try to satisfy everybody. So our numbers we have in official plans and the zoning bylaws tend to be more guidelines. And I've heard this word used before, they're guidelines, they're not absolute. Well, the public thinks they're absolute. And they want us to be more cognizant of those absolute numbers in a negotiation. So I don't know how far away from those numbers we want to go in negotiations. Or we actually are aware that we are negotiating terms and conditions in all the decisions we make. So I just want to have that discussion. Are people comfortable with the present way we're doing things? Or should we tighten up the situation and get more confidence back from the public that we're actually trying to enforce our bylaws? Because no use hiring a bylaw enforcement officer when we're not even enforcing the bylaws ourselves. So I just wanted to have that open end, and I'd get some feedback. If people are comfortable on the way we're negotiating right now, I'm happy. I'll let the whole thing die.
Nick, I wonder if we could get some of your comments on these three bullets, one at a time.
Sure. So, I guess one of the ways that we approach planning, and I think it's pretty common through C.O.W, is that you have a set of rules and regulations, but there are circumstances where they may not be appropriate. So I'll take the example of where you have an individual that maybe owns 500 feet of frontage and 10 acres of land. And so they want to go with a dwelling that doesn't satisfy the caps. We'll advise the customer what the caps are, and advise them whether we can support or not support the thing. So, do we strictly uphold them? For the most part we do, but we view each circumstance on a case-by-case basis, which I think is pretty common for C.O.W, at least the municipalities I've worked in. The second bullet point about the C.O.W, the C.O.W operates independently of council, and that's the way you develop the C.O.W, is to have some independence. There was a time not too long ago when council was C.O.W. You made a decision to go away from that and replace it with a body that has 2 councillors and 5 members of the public. So I think it's hard for council to direct them not to negotiate. I think that's part of the process. And the third bullet point about carefully balancing the best use of tax dollars, I think that's something we do every day. You've seen with the most recent example I gave you is the new zoning bylaw. We had 12 appeals. We settled most of them. One of the reasons for settling was to save money and also uphold the intent of the planning document. So you find common ground, and that's what we did in the majority of the cases. And unfortunately, the ones that were settled and that we aren't able to settle, they're going to cost us a lot of money, but that's part of the process, and we can't control that. We can just do our best to try to find a balance. Where we find a balance, we bring it to council, we get your approval. If we're heading in the right direction, then we go back to the board and we settle. So that's about the best I can do for you.
So, in regards to the second bullet point, where committee adjustment does some negotiating, they're allowed to do that?
They are, as long as we're not going nuts. So let's say somebody applies for, the side yard requirement is 5 meters.
Right.
Let's say somebody applies for 4 meters. They're not able to grant 3 meters, but they could grant 4.5.
They can't worsen the situation.
Exactly.
Okay. So they're allowed to do that, and we're not in a position to tell them they can't do that because they are a quasi-judicial, separate from us committee?
That's correct.
Okay. Lori?
I think I just want to clarify one thing Nick said. He said, in most cases, we are upholding. I think what he meant is, we are always upholding, but we will recommend that the applicant, what the proper process is if they want to go outside. Because I think both today and yesterday, where council was looking for discretion, has come up because we are strictly enforcing. So we are strictly enforcing. I think we just didn't phrase that quite right, and I just want to leave council with the impression, because I know that's what Councilor Wienkel may have heard in that discussion. So that, am I correct? And that wasn't exactly what you meant. So that we're enforcing 100%. That is what council has asked us to do. But sometimes if we see that there are
So those processes, the zoning bylaw amendment or official plan amendment or committee of adjustment variance, those are tools that are offered to our applicants. And then it's up to either council for official plan or zoning to make a decision, or a committee of adjustment to make a decision on the variance. I've sat through a number of the committee of adjustment meetings, and so I'm quite happy with the way they performed. I didn't walk away dissatisfied, let's put it that way, with the decision. So start at this end of the table, Councilor Cooper.
Well, I just would like to thank Councillor Bianca for bringing this up. I think it's an interesting and important matter to discuss, and I think in terms of one of the things that I'd like to comment on is that whenever we discuss these things, the first thing I often hear about is, you know, certain situations and the applicant may want this or that, and I think one of the things that really is very important when considering any request, variance or whatever, is remembering that this is one applicant and there may be anywhere from 1,200 to 600 to 400 households being impacted, especially when it comes to community plans. And so just each time we think about these things, I ask us all to remember that that's one applicant. There may be 600 families standing behind with maybe a different view. So that is important. And I guess what will be helpful in the future, I think, from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs will be more information with respect to what is minor and what the role of the OMB is. And some of those things, I think, will give us guidance in the future. But in the interim, I think that the 4 tests of planning are very critical, and I'm not sure that they're always adhered to. I think we hear that things meet the 4 tests, but it's not always supported, especially at the OMB. So I raise that issue as well. And the final thing is that I think every time we negotiate and are lenient with an applicant, it creates inconsistency, and I am concerned about inconsistency in our planning processes. And I know that every situation is different, and that's the story we hear. But on the other hand, you know, by being more lenient, and we're maybe more lenient with some than others, that creates an inconsistent environment and upsets people. So I think we have to consider those things as well. So just some general comments, and I'm glad that it was brought up. Thank you.
Councilor Douglas?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Wang, for bringing this to our attention. I think part of what I see here is it's more public misconception of what we actually do and how we enforce. Which I understand that is a bit of a problem. I don't know how we can further educate that we in fact do uphold our bylaws. We do enforce strictly. But again, I know Councillor Cooper talks about being inconsistent. I think that I would rather use the term that we need to be flexible. We live in a community that is extremely diverse, and very often the decisions that are made from the Committee of Adjustment, which I can speak to directly, are made from an environmental standpoint, topography. We're not cookie-cutter lots, and we don't fit into the mold for everything, which is why we have a Committee of Adjustment. So I would rather say that we try to be flexible for our constituents, not to disadvantage any of the other constituents or the neighbors and so on, and we have that process in place, and we do look at that quite seriously. But I do think that it's important that we have flexibility to give to also to our constituents that are applying. And I think our planning department do a very, very good job of explaining what the processes are when they don't fit into that mold, and how they can approach getting through to a situation that is palatable for them. So I think we actually do a very, very good job. And is there always room for improvement? Absolutely. Should we always be reassessing? I think we should. So it's important that Councillor Wang brought this forward, and I do thank him for that. But I personally, as a member from the Committee of Adjustment, feel that, it's a tough job sitting up there trying to make the right decisions, and sometimes, to be flexible, you need to be able to, be inconsistent, I guess, is the right way to put that. Thank you.
Anybody over here? Councillor Edwards?
Well, I made a few notes here. Am I now understanding that our new bylaw is totally in effect? Because Paul made reference to the new bylaw. Is it in place now? All OMB things with regard to the bylaw are gone.
Sorry. There's two site-specific appeals left.
Okay.
So there's one that's the Macy's Bay, one that's Savers. Everything else, save and accept those two properties is in effect.
Okay, fair enough. There was reference that we negotiated OLR yesterday. We didn't negotiate. We gave a suggestion as to what we would be willing to settle at. There's been no negotiation. The party wasn't even in the room. So let's make that quite clear. One of the points, and it's coming back from what we just went through with regard to this word discretion. I think that council needs to understand how our system of laws works in Ontario, because I think there's a strong misconception here as to what we are able to do in our bylaws, and that's getting us into some degree of difficulty. And I don't pretend to be a lawyer, but I think this is the way the system works. There was reference to talking to people in municipal affairs. Well, in the previous dealings with them with regard to septic, these people duck, dodge, weave, and hide in their shell hole. They do not want to be in a position where they're really giving any opinions, and possibly we can understand why. I do find it interesting that we say we are upholding our rules and we want to be flexible, but we don't want to broadcast our committee of adjustment meetings because we don't want everybody to know what's going on. I think we've got a great inconsistency here if we're saying, oh, we do all these things. Many people think that we don't enforce our rules and that things get allowed. Now, we've got a structural problem in the sense that it was the Wild West until 1970. We had no rules. But even today, if you go out and were to talk to many of our constituents, they do not have great faith in what we're doing, especially around the planning area. So I think we have a responsibility to try and make sure we're doing everything possible in that regard to get the faith back from the public. That would include, in my mind, broadcasting all of our meetings. Committee of Adjustment included. Thank you.
Councillor Kay?
Okay, just a quick one. As far as the Committee of Adjustment goes, I think because there is no firm benchmark as far as what minor is, the people are coming here to get approved for something. You can't be the bad guy. You don't want to be the bad guy. You want to work with these people. And if that entails negotiating, a meter here, a meter there, on the size of the property, I think it's well worth it.
Councillor Randall?
I think we should modify the second point in the resolution. It's the last couple of words there. I think we should try, it says notify the Committee of Adjustment that council anticipates that the Committee of Adjustment will approve or deny applications in their entirety. And I would say, and trying to minimize the amount of negotiations of additional conditions. So try to minimize. I don't think the Committee of Adjustment members would agree to having that without negotiating any additional conditions. So I think that should be just modified. To the word minimize.
Personally, I think we should take it out, because I don't think we should be telling Committee of Adjustment what to do. And they're well aware to try and abide by the rules that are in place with minimal amount of flexibility. They're already aware of that, so. Councilor Bocheck.
Mr. Mayor, can I get a reread of the resolution? My computer has gone.
Oh, yeah, here.
Let's take that. Just handed out yesterday.
I got it on.
But yeah,
Happy to reread it.
No, I've got it, thank you.
And Councilor Edwards, you had your hand up?
No, I've forgotten what I was gonna say, and then
We'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'll restart my head.
Councilor Douglas?
Thank you. I would ask that that be taken out of the second bullet without negotiating any additional changes and have nothing there. I think that the Committee of Adjustment has a clear mandate of how to look at these applications, and I think I don't think we have the right at this point to start changing the goalposts again, unless we change the direction to the Committee of Adjustment in its entirety.
I remembered my thought.
Okay, go ahead.
And that is, those of us at this table are the elected representatives. We can tell the Committee of Adjustment whatever we want. We're the elected people. They aren't elected. They were appointed. If we don't like what they're doing, they can be gone. So I think we have to be very, very, very clear. We are the decision makers in this township.
I think we need to pull up the rules on Committee of Adjustment.
Sure.
Nick, do you know them by heart, or?
Well, I don't think it's just like the powers of the Committee of Adjustment are found in the Planning Act. So when you appoint a Committee of Adjustment, whether it's council or members of the public or a hybrid, they have to abide by the Planning Act, and they're to be unfettered in their duties. So I think what Councilor Edwards is suggesting may be viewed as fettering their duties.
So how do we account for the fact that Councillor Cooper was replaced because people didn't like what his wife wrote?
That's a totally different subject.
It is not.
Let's go there.
It is not.
Lori?
Thank you, Your Worship. When we researched it last, the Planning Act says Committee of Adjustment members, citizen members are appointed for the term of council. Council members are appointed annually. And we went through that discussion before. So you have appointed a Committee of Adjustment for the term, and every year you review the council appointment.
Councilor Kay?
I agree with you that in the resolution, all reference to Committee of Adjustment should come out.
We want to do Councilor Rienko?
I will do what the majority of the council wants.
Can we study this? Refer it to a committee?
Councilor Bocheck.
Since this is Colin, it's kind of a discovery. Nick, you made mention in your last statement of the Committee of Adjustments being that of appointed members, and then you said a hybrid, and then you said councilors. So my question is, can you direct me on where I can find what the composition is for the Committee of Adjustments? And you mentioned three different things that are appointed members of the public and a hybrid between councilors and the public. And then I've never known about this, but you can actually have the Committee of Adjustments, which is just councilors?
Yes.
You have three options. You have all council, you have all members of the public, and then you have a hybrid of mixing the two.
Okay, so my question is, can you direct me to somewhere in the Planning Act that I can read up on that? Because it sounds very interesting, and it may pertain to what Councilor Rienko has put out here.
You have a bylaw that governs the Committee of Adjustment, so I think the clerk might be able to circulate that to you. That sort of outlines how the C of A is appointed and who the members are and what their powers are and procedural, so.
And I think for myself, not for everyone else, but for myself, I would like a clear understanding of what the Committee of Adjustments legally is, and before we make any adjustments to what we're currently doing. From my
I believe we have the power to dissolve a committee of adjustment if we're not happy with them.
You can do that.
And do a new structure.
You can do that.
But as far as directing them as to how they perform at the table, we're not in that position.
Thank you for reiterating what I was trying to say.
Lori?
So a couple of things. There are two pieces to answer Councilor Wojcik's question. One is the Planning Act sets out what the committee of adjustment can look like, and it can be the three options. And then our committee bylaw, I'm not sure what it's called, says what council has chosen. So council can choose to make that difference if they so wish. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is I think Councilor Winkle put the resolution together because he wanted to get a discussion on the table. I don't know how wedded he is to his resolution, that'll be up to him to tell you. But I'm uncomfortable with the resolution in its entirety because reminding planning staff that the expectation of documents are strictly upheld. We already do that, so by passing a resolution, you're suggesting that we don't, which is your right, but not something that makes me comfortable. Similarly, you've already addressed the committee of adjustment piece, and the third thing is carefully balance, that council will be directed to carefully balance the best use of taxpayers' dollars. Again, do you want to send a message that you're not doing that already? Because you are doing it. So, I just leave that with you in your debate.
Thank you.
Councilor Edwards?
Why don't we put something in to, that we encourage staff to continue to closely enforce the laws and use similar thing that to continue to spend our tax dollars wisely. So we're not giving the aspersion that we haven't been doing these. Would that be good? That'd be better?
Councilor Winkle?
I just want to get this discussion going. I don't care if you pass a resolution or not. I just wanted to have the discussion. You're having it. What you want to do with it, it's up to the majority.
You're the author of the resolution.
The majority wants to.
I like Councilor Edwards' suggestion that we amend it slightly to put it in a positive spin. And otherwise, I'd recommend just tabling it.
Yep.
I just table it myself.
You know, except it's sitting on the agenda and will be there forever. And we've had the discussion and we're all on camera having spoken to it. And, I could go on about a particular email that I had with a constituent a while ago, twisted the words around what we said, but anyways.
Lori has a comment.
Oh, hi, Lori. Would you like the floor again?
It can also be withdrawn if that is such a council.
Does it come off the agenda then?
Yes.
No, the agenda's already been published.
Yeah, so it's there.
But it's not there in perpetuity. If you table it, then you can bring it back at any time. If you withdraw it.
So Councilor Winkle,
Well,
my suggestion is amend it and put a positive spin to things.
that's okay.
Along with Councilor Edwards. Go ahead.
Well, I was also going to say, possibly you should sit down with staff, because obviously you have reasons why you brought this forward. You just didn't have a vision in the middle of the night. There were things that you had come across that were causing you concern, and so therefore I would suggest that you should sit down with staff to make sure that, you know, your concerns are not concerns. That would be my suggestion. Well, I mean,
I can respond to that. I can respond to that, like, I just wanted to make sure everybody is comfortable with the processes and the decision for making, when it comes to zoning bylaws and the numbers in those zoning bylaws. I know that I can't be a maverick here and be tough on the zoning bylaws and not get three other people to agree with me. So I'm very willing to continue on with negotiations that we're doing right now, because I know I can get support for that type of discussions. But, no, I'm not married to this. I just wanted to have discussion, make sure everybody realizes what we're doing, and they're happy what we're doing, and it sounds like everybody's happy what we're doing, and
I didn't say I
No,
have,
but
I
not
don't know
everybody.
what, because I don't know what we are doing. I mean, I guess it's the issue. So,
But at least you're aware that the concerns out there, I have the concerns, but I'm not going to be pushing my concerns in my decisions.
Councilor Kay?
Oh, really? I think I forgot. Okay, why can't we change it, be it resolved that the committee of the whole recommends that the committee have a discussion on, and then, you know, planning staff's expectations, the committee of adjustment, best use, you know, and maybe even, take off the last one. But, I mean, that was the intent of Paul's, what he's saying, that's the intent of it, to have this discussion. We're having it, and that's all there was to it. He didn't want any changes, or you're not married to changes.
No one wants to see the changes, fine. Okay.
Oh, sorry? Are you withdrawing it, or?
No, I say whatever the majority wants.
Not helping. Okay, the mover and the seconder, Councilor Douglas and Councilor Edwards. Councilor Douglas?
I would suggest that we perhaps do, as Councillor Kay just suggested, that this be just revamped a little bit, reworded, that this was open for discussion. I don't think that the 3 bullets accurately, maybe is what Councillor Wankel was trying to say. He wanted a discussion. We've had that discussion. I don't think we need to remind our planning staff. We don't need to talk to the Committee of Adjustment because we don't have the right to be doing that, obviously, through the Planning Act. And we do carefully balance our tax dollars every year. So I think it sends the wrong message here, and that perhaps we can just change that to have a discussion on various items, as Councillor Kay approved. Does that help, Jeff?
No. If you want to withdraw it and give staff direction to just have a conversation with Member Wango, that works.
Don't need it.
We had a conversation.
I would think the three that.
We had a conversation.
Yes.
Councilor Edwards?
well, the other thing we could do is we could ask our constituents how they feel about these items. And, you know, we could go out to our cottage associations and say, how do you feel about these? We're making assumptions here that everything's all right. Paul obviously had a concern that maybe things weren't all right. And I'm not sure that I have full knowledge. I would invite everybody to have a kick at the can. And this isn't something that has to happen today, but, you know, maybe that what this should be done with this is to put this on the agenda for the next leaders meeting.
Well, we had that debate, and we had that debate in June, and on enforcing bylaws, and there was concerns from the majority of the cottage associations there that we weren't enforcing our bylaws. And so what came out of that was the issue that maybe we should hire another enforcement bylaw officer, and I'm saying to myself, well, that's great, but are we, as a council, maybe adjustment or staff, are they enforcing the bylaws? So I just had that question. And we had the discussion, and people seem to be comfortable, more or less, of what we're doing right now, so that's all I wanted to accomplish. If the will is to withdraw, I have no problem with it.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break? Okay, because I want to have a discussion with Paul. So we'll recess for 5 minutes.
No, but we can't vote on it.
I think,
That's what
called yesterday.
Second by whom?
There's the wash. Okay, so we don't have to worry about confidential. Okay.
My drawer.
I was just going to raise the lemon law. We can do that.
Yeah, we're gonna take that resolution completely off the table, we're gonna see if we can get one that says we have vodka tonic and noon every Friday.
After that,
I'm Monday to Thursday.
We're not here Monday to Thursday, so. Oh, maybe I should be more considerate.
Yeah.
I think we better go.
Baseball and that.
I was just someone else to,
Okay.
second day. Finish the meeting. Here, so we'll call the meeting back to order. So Paul has revised, the resolution here. It's moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that continue to strictly uphold Township planning documents, and Council continues to carefully balance the best use of tax dollars while upholding the intent of Township planning documents when determining how to resolve an OMB appeal. Any further discussion?
Can you reread that again? I just wanted to say,
I'd like to hear it again, please.
So moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Bocek, be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that planning staff continue to strictly uphold Township planning documents. Okay? And Council continues to carefully balance the best use of tax dollars while upholding the intent of Township planning documents when determining how to resolve an OMB appeal.
So you basically pulled the bullet.
We pulled the middle bullet on committee of adjustment. That was the general consensus around the table. Okay. We'll call the vote. Oh, Councillor Kay?
Just had a question. So in the body of this, the reference to committee adjustment comes out too? Or we're just gonna leave it in?
So, that's not part of the resolution.
Okay.
But it's in the report. Stated in the report.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Any carries? Any opposed? 2 opposed. Motion carries. And final one, moved by Councillor Edwards, second by Councillor Douglas, be resolved the Committee of the Whole does now adjourn at 10:55 a.m. until the special committee of the whole meeting on Wednesday, October 12th, 2016, immediately preceding this one.
Immediately following.
Proceeding.
Proceeding. All those in favor?
What are you saying? I think.
We're having another meeting right after
Yep.
this one.
Yeah, but isn't, I mean, it's following.
It's proceeding right after this one.
Oh, proceeding as opposed to preceding. Okay, understand.
I'm just afraid that if we're stepping this up, was there a scheduled time for this public meeting?
Yeah.
The budget meeting? And are we going to be excluding members of the public that?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock, okay, thank you.
11 o'clock or after this meeting.
Thank you, great.
Okay, let's call a question. All those in favor? Carries. Okay, so we'll take a break, slight break, before we start the next committee, the whole budget meeting.
I did get them both. For what? No. No, I emailed you and asked if you wanted to be on, but you never got back to me.
Oh,
No.
not me, why would I respond to that?
Because you did it last year.
Oh, for the,
For one of
candidate.
the stuff.
No, we've never had,
No, you as a person.
No, I've never made it. It's always been the budget, the budget levy.
Well, you did a delegation last year anyway, so that's why I emailed you.
No, I did a delegation last year for the candidate one, okay?
Well, either way, I just emailed everyone who did it last year.
Okay.
So I got nothing.
I'll send you the note for, they just had a couple of budget items.
No.
We went to Brian and I
Really?